What's up, heroes, and welcome to episode 100. I'm your host, the House Ninja, superhero, DJ, and music producer. Whether you're new to the podcast or you've been with me all 100 episodes, welcome. I've got a very special guest this week, but before we leap into the episode, I wanted to remind you about my next live performance on May 28th at the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta for MomoCon, where I'll be headlining their Flow Jam. So break out your poi, staff, hoop, or pixel whip, and come vibe with me starting at 11:30 p.m. Today's guest is Alex Holmes, an English singer and songwriter for pop and EDM music. She's worked with hundreds of producers and labels worldwide and is ranked the #1 5-star vocalist on the Vocalizer platform. Her releases include tracks with Universal Music, Sony Music, No Copyright Sounds, and Spinnin' Records. And she's been featured on records with Sean Paul, Pitbull, Ashton Kutcher, and DJ The Prophet. Alex's music has reached #1 on Beatport, has been used in Motorola advertisements, the Netflix series Lock and Key, and she's gained millions of streams. She's been endorsed by Tiesto, Hardwell, Armin van Buuren, and featured on a number of Spotify playlists including New Music Friday, Shuffle Syndrome, and Get Popped. In this episode, we talk about how to get the most out of your collaborations with vocalists, different types of royalties, and how to nurture your creativity. But first, cue the intro music. All right, Alex, welcome to the Producer Life podcast.
Hi, Brian. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. I was kind of thinking about, where to begin this interview, and I was looking at your extensive biography, and it struck me that you began at an amazingly early age. You started at age 5 writing your first song. Did you come from a musical family?
I did. So funnily enough, bath time back when I was a little kid was the chance for my dad to bring out the guitar and start playing songs to us. So it was really from him that I kind of owe my love for music and my exposure from an early age to music. And when I was kind of growing up and listening to a lot of the stuff that he was singing and playing to me, he was also an amateur songwriter. So I was very inspired from a young age to write my own songs. And that was something that he encouraged. And we kind of did together as like an after-school activity.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And so you guys created songs together. Did any of those ever become something that wound up getting published or produced?
Unfortunately not. Actually, we keep saying that we should go over some of those because there were some really beautiful little songs that we made together. Mostly more like acoustic singer-songwriter because he is very much into playing guitar. So it was more kind of that acoustic inspired type of music. And yeah, it's definitely something that we keep saying that we will do at some point, but we haven't got around to it.
I'm curious about the subject of songs for a 5-year-old. Do you remember what your topics were about?
It's funny you should ask. I think back then, one of the first songs that I actually wrote was with a friend that had come around for an after-school play date. And I think we had written what we thought was the appropriate thing to write as an adult. And it was about having a glass of wine and going to the pub.
So you were writing party songs at age 5.
Absolutely. I just threw myself in there.
Okay, awesome. And then so that continued on through. So in England, what do you call sort of elementary school?
So I am primary school and then into secondary school. When I hit into secondary school, I was doing lots and lots of different musical activities through the school. And also alongside that, I had already been studying the piano. So I had been doing a lot of songwriting by myself. And I started to gig from, I think, and I probably don't know if I should say this out loud, but I think my first gig was age 15. My first big gig, my first kind of industry gig. And I was at the Troubadour Club in London. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but they said to me, don't tell anyone that you are 15, pretend that you are 18. So I got away doing my first kind of industry gig at a really amazing venue. Actually, it's where Bob Dylan did his first ever gig in the UK. Gorgeous little venue called the Troubadour Club in London. And then kind of from there, I was gigging as much as I could. And I was, I kind of went off to, I was so alongside the gigging, I was studying I was studying up to doing through my grades with piano and singing, and also I was playing violin back then. So I had a lot of exposure to sort of different instruments. I was also in big bands, rock bands, pop bands. So I was kind of doing a whole different plethora of different music and writing and performing in different genres. And then I went off to study popular music at Goldsmiths in London. And whilst I was there, I was again exposed to more. I was exposed more to kind of alternative dance music, more kind of underground styles, and different artists, like up and coming artists in London on the scene at that point in time, that were kind of crossing over between mainstream and more kind of electronic.
Okay, sort of the pop EDM genre.
Yes, yeah, but for me, actually, at that point in time, I was still very much into acoustic singer-songwriter, and that was kind of very much where I was thinking that I would stay, and that would be my career path.
Okay. It sounds like you did a lot of performing early on, and now when I was searching YouTube for performances and that sort of thing, and I didn't see much. So your career has really changed. Do you miss the gigging, or?
It really has changed, yes. So back kind of when I had finished university, I was doing a lot of gigging. I was traveling in and out of London to do showcases. And really kind of over those kind of few years after I'd finished uni, I was exploring different sounds, or exploring my own work as a producer and an arranger. So I was kind of started doing a bit more like electronic pop. And I had some releases back in, so I had like more acoustic stuff back in 2013. By 2015, I was doing my own productions and doing more like electronic pop. And then through that, I had a couple of music videos come out. I'm not sure if you'd seen these. And off the back of this, I had people inquiring with me, asking about collaborations. And that's kind of really when collaborations started to become more of a thing. But it wasn't till the end of 2016 when I kind of massively fell into dance, music, EDM, and started to explore different subgenres of this genre.
Okay. Wow. There's so much you just said that I want to kind of unpack. I did see one music video on your YouTube channel for Hire, and it was kind of a post-apocalyptic music video, but the track is beautiful.
Blood.
What's that?
With a fair bit of blood on the
With a fair bit of blood
face.
And a tank chasing somebody. I was like, how did she get a tank in a music video? So
that was what do you call it? CGI.
Okay, well, whoever did it did a nice job. It looked great. So, who were some of your earliest collaborations, and how did that come about? Because that seems like that's been kind of the direction that your career has taken. You've had hundreds of collaborations, yes. I guess, since 2015 or 2016.
2016, yeah, very much so. So one of the first people that I started to collaborate with was JJ Dembiak, who is a kind of bass player and multi-instrumentalist and songwriter over in the US. And he reached out to me. He was like, look, I have these ideas. Would you be up for collaborating? He'd worked with lots of different singers and songwriters. And so I started to work on some tracks with him. Some of that was rock, some of it was pop, some of it was blues inspired. So we did kind of a mixture of stuff together. At the same time as this, I had also started collaborating with other songwriters, writing specifically for the Asian market. So for like J-pop, Japanese pop and Korean pop music. So I was kind of exposed to a lot of different stuff at that point in time. And off the back of that, those songwriting sessions that I'd had, there with that specific publisher that we were kind of arranging them through, they set up a Christmas party. And at this Christmas, this was in 2016, we had the Christmas party. We had it 3 months after Christmas in March. I met loads of different songwriters that they had on their books at that point in time. And one of the songwriters and singers that I met, she had come over from Australia, and we were discussing as a vocalist, what are the different potential income streams and ways to meet new producers and kind of to explore different genres. And she'd mentioned that she started working through a platform and collaborating through a platform called Vocalizer that I was completely unaware of at the time. And so I kind of looked into it and I was like, okay, that looks cool. And I made a profile, but I didn't publish it. And then I just sort of 6 months later, I looked at it and I went, you know what, I'm just going to go for this. It was very much focused on EDM producers. And at that point in time, I hadn't had a massive amount of exposure to writing in this genre. So I was quite kind of a bit nervous to try this, but I just kind of threw myself in after 6 months of just having had this profile sat there. I was like, I'm going to do this. And from, I think it was like the September of 2016, I started to reach out to different producers. I started sending different ideas back and forth with people. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I think by 2017, I was writing something like 8 to 10 songs a track, just a month, sorry, 8 to 10 songs a month just through Vocalizer. This was kind of excluding the direct communications I was having with producers outside of this platform. So that was really an amazing turning point, certainly in me kind of falling into the dance music industry and getting loads of exposure to different tracks, different subgenres of dance music. I was doing stuff in hardstyle, drum and bass to deep tropical house, a whole mixture of stuff. And then at the same time, also doing more like commercial pop stuff through this platform as well. So that was really, I owe a lot to that platform, and I'm very grateful for it because it was a chance to connect with people from all over the world. So that was a massive kind of starting point, if you like, for me getting into that part of the industry in that genre.
Yeah. And it sounds like also some of the networking events that you went to helped, but what is it about the Vocalizer platform? I looked at it. I started to sign up for an account, but then I thought, oh, she might have a referral code. So I didn't yet, but I did spot you on Sound Better as well, which has which is a similar platform for producers and vocalists. What is it that makes Vocalizer so unique?
So for me, I had been introduced to Vocalizer, so that was kind of why I set up my profile there. And I think it was quite early days back then when I set up my profile. So, and I was very, very proactive on the platform. I think that the great thing about Vocalizer is that you have that direct communication very easily straight away. It's not that you can connect with people straight away and have a messaging system like you would in Instagram, for example. Sound Better, I actually signed up to later on. I can't remember exactly when, probably in around 2018. And I did do quite a lot through Sound Better as well. I love that platform too. I think that the Vocalizer platform, it was less restrictive. I think they have implemented some new restrictions. Like certainly you could start with, I think, free account with them and you could explore a lot of the options and communicate with a lot of people. I think now it's very much a paid for platform. In order to even be able to start communicating with anyone. And I think it's similar on Sound Better. They've got a really great system on there. They had actually been picked up by Spotify for a period of time, and then they decided to go back to just being Sound Better without Spotify behind them. And I kind of think that's a really good thing, because the whole point of these platforms is to kind of encourage both independent artists and producers to collaborate with each other, but also to collaborate with professionals in the industry. So there kind of needed to be that kind of indie approach to it. And I think that works really nicely. So both of these platforms are amazing. And there are plenty of other platforms out there now. I think Vocalio is one of them. I haven't kind of got around to exploring them because for me, things kind of, as I said, snowballed massively with Vocalizer and then Sound Better. And then I was starting to get so many different inquiries, which is I'm so grateful for. So many different inquiries over the years that I couldn't keep up with everything. And I think you have to pick and choose over a period of time to kind of pick what works best for you. And that kind of, it got to that point for me. But no, there are certainly other amazing platforms out there as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good problem to have. What is the advantage for a producer I think Vocalizer, it looks like you have to sign up for a paid account before, you mentioned this, before you even start communicating with a artist.
It never used to be like that. It was much more open from the beginning if you wanted to just try it with a free account. So I think that's an unfortunate thing that they've done that. And I think that closes off the option for a lot of like singers and songwriters and producers that are, say, just starting out but have some amazing tracks and just want to find a way find collaborators. Yeah.
Okay. So if someone is looking for a vocalist, uh, something like Sound Better, where you don't have to have an account, there isn't a significant platform advantage to Vocalizer. Do they have a broader range of vocalists? Do they have, maybe higher quality control standards?
I
I
actually
don't know.
think Sound Better have the higher quality control. I think they're a lot. They certainly, from when I signed up, they seemed a lot kind of fussier when you wanted to apply to have the pro account. So I think on both of them you can have badges to be deemed a professional in their opinion. And I think you had to supply a lot more kind of evidence for Sound Better. So I think on there, and also on there, I think you can quite easily find, if you wanted the mixing or mastering engineer of, I don't know, for example, I don't know if they are on there, but for example, of someone that's worked with Sia or U2 or Adele or something, you might be able to find those people on there. And I've certainly seen different professionals advertising their skills on there who have worked with some huge names.
Yeah, interesting. I have not hired anybody off of Sound Better yet. I've used Fiverr a bunch in the past.
Okay.
Because it's a more broad-based platform. It's not just
Yeah.
vocalists and producers and music-centric, but I've used them for cover art and other things. And it certainly seems like on Fiverr, the range of prices and I guess quality is much broader. But you certainly see high-end artists on there, but you also see people doing things for literally $5. So
no, it's also an amazing way to build up, isn't it? To be able to have that option to say, I'll do something for free, or I'll do something for a really minimal amount. I just want to get those collaborations going, and a lot of amazing stuff comes out of collaborating with people. So it's something that if you have the opportunity to do it, or you want to do it, you should really dive in like wholeheartedly with this, because I strongly believe that some of the most amazing songs and tracks and any kind of art forms, actually things come out. There's some amazing things that come out of collaborations.
Yeah, and that's clearly where you've excelled. You've got tracks that range from trance to pop to drum and bass to hard style. I mean, sort of all over the EDM spectrum.
It really is.
It's interesting. One of the collaborators that it seems like you've done a lot with is Andrew over at Approaching Nirvana. You guys had recently did What If? You had Rise Again. You did the Toss a Coin to Your Witcher remix. How did that relationship start with Andrew?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. And it might be better with his memory to ask him exactly how it started. I can't remember which platform we were on. It might have been Vocalizer that we'd started communicating through. It might have been something that we just he'd reached out directly. I can't remember that, but I think that was around that sort of early period for me, around 2015, 2016. I think in 2016 he'd been coming over to London for some music convention or some work that he was doing over here, some sessions, and we ended up meeting up for a burger. Before this, I think I'd done like a vocal session for him, and we'd had, say, a couple of calls, and we just got on really well, and we were like, let's meet up and see in person, let's have a discussion about what kind of collaborations we could do. And it was just one of those situations where you really click with someone creatively. You get their mindset. He has built this fantastic kind of empire, if you like, of independent music, and he has this huge back catalogue. I just really liked his mindset and the approach that he was taking, and I wanted to do more kind of independent and self-releases as well. So we'd kind of had this discussion over this burger, and then he kind of went back to the US, and we were communicating, and we started to write, say, like 1-2 tracks a year. And it's just been something that over the years we've just consistently been writing together and staying in touch and keeping an eye on each other's careers and trying to help each other out and see where we can kind of utilize, say, my contacts with labels, or his contacts with more with different distributors and different platforms. And it's just been a really lovely kind of creative relationship that's blossomed a lot over the past few years. And like you said, we have done a mixture of stuff. Creatively, he's very open-minded, which I really enjoyed, because this is something that we might touch on later. You can often find when you're collaborating with somebody that they are very adamant that they want something to be a certain way, or they don't know how they want it to be, but they keep giving you very vague words. For example, a word that often has come up over the years whenever I've asked someone, okay, so how do you imagine the vocal to be? They just say to me, I want something cool. I go, okay, which avenue of cool are we discussing here? Do you want, and when we say cool, are we talking about kind of, something sexy, something, some breathy vocals? Are we talking about, are we talking about the lyrics? They need to sound a certain way. So it was just really nice with Andrew. Everything was just always very open and communicative. There was always a kind of freedom creatively, but also a really great communication. And that's something that, I'm talking about in quite depth, because I think it's really important when it comes to collaborating to have this. And that's why that working relationship has just worked so well over these years, and why we continue to make and explore different genres together and make these really cool tracks together, and have a lot of fun with it as well. As you know, we did Toss a Coin to a Witcher. This was something that Andrew suggested doing, and just on a call that we were having. And he was saying about it, and I said, yeah, I want to jump in on that. That sounds so fun. And I love singing along to that when I was watching the first season of Witcher. And he was like, okay, cool, let's try it. And then we made it. He made a slap house version of it, and here we are. And I'm so happy with it. It was so much fun.
I wound up playing that at Geeky Gaming Convention, Winterfest here in Atlanta, and it went over really well. So,
amazing.
It was nice. My introduction to Andrew was actually his Avengers remix some years ago, and that was the first time I came across his work. But he does some amazing geeky remixes that I just love.
Absolutely. Yeah, his background is fascinating. The fact that he kind of, he went from very much in the gaming world, and then has explored so many different genres, and creatively has just sort of really really pushed out into different spaces. And I find that really, really inspiring as well.
Yeah, his interview was, I think, 63 on this podcast, and that was one of my favorites. It strikes me you guys complement each other very well, because the title of his interview was on being a prolific producer, because he has hundreds of releases, but he's not a singer. He is an instrumentalist. He produces things. He's not really interested in performing, and it seems like you are very much on the same side, and that you're a vocalist, but you don't have a strong desire to go out and perform. You just want to create amazing art. And so I can see why your two styles really complement each other, and why you guys have come up with so many amazing collaborations.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's one of those situations where you kind of you have to be so grateful for those people that you work with, because as I mentioned, you can often be working with people that are perhaps not so grateful, or it's not very easy to communicate with. And so this is just a really important aspect of it. And that's also why those collaborations work so well with Andrew.
Okay. So maybe this would be a good opportunity then to talk about what creates a good collaboration. And maybe you can talk about how, since your experiences with Andrew have been so overwhelmingly positive, talk about how those collaborations frequently start. How do you actually do it? Is it emailing stems back and forth? Are you using something else? Or elaborate a little bit more about what it is that makes that such a great professional relationship.
Sure. I think I'll go kind of a bit more general about kind of collaborations and the communication and whatnot that I would kind of recommend. And obviously, depending on your creative approach and the way that you like to work, this is just, take it or leave it. But this is kind of my as we say in England, my 2 pennies worth. So it's a really funny old school.
we say 2 cents worth. So
2
I think
cents worth.
I'm sure we borrowed it from you guys.
I was like, but I'm not American, so I will say the English version.
I'm sure we stole it from you. So,
So I'd say that in terms of the very first kind of communications that you have with people, whether you're working with them through a platform or you've reached out to them over social media or through their website, the first thing is to just be really open and really friendly. It makes a massive difference if you put a little line in there that says, I absolutely am so inspired by this work that you've done, or I've checked out this, rather than just going in there kind of cold and just saying, hi, do you want to collaborate? Like it makes a massive difference if you have that first really positive line of communication. The next thing I would say is it be really clear in the way that you want to work with somebody. One of the things that I've noticed over the years, and I was a bit kind of naive to back when I was, let's say, kind of starting out, is the kind of legal side of things, which nobody wants to get into when it comes to talking about a creative collaboration. But it's so integral to have that understanding of where you both stand and how the collaboration is going to work in that sense of things from the beginning, because you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know if this is going to be a self-release, you do it yourself through a distributor, you get a label pick it up, you get a major label pick it up. Then where do you stand? Who's kind of who is communicating with those people, and on what basis? What have you agreed in terms of your terms? So that's something that we can kind of go into a little bit more in a bit, if you like, because I have realized over the years that, and I was very lucky that I had like an amazing mentor and manager and publisher over the years that were informing me of the things I needed to be aware of. But even I've made mistakes with contracts I signed many years ago because I didn't know what I was looking for, or I didn't know what I should be agreeing in terms of the terms. So it's definitely something that we can discuss more if that is, I think that would definitely be of interest to the producers and DJs that might listen to this.
Absolutely.
And so then kind of leading on from that, it's integral that you kind of give a clear idea of the direction that you want to go. So as I mentioned to you earlier, the word call, I would avoid this where possible when discussing with a singer and songwriter. And I try to be a little bit more descriptive, even if your description of what you're looking for is something like, I want something a bit more a kind of a breathy vocal or a lyric about this kind of topic. If you can give a bit more information, that's really helpful. And also, if you can provide any references to songs tracks that you love and songs that you love and vocals that you find inspire you, that's also really helpful. Like the worst thing from my side that I've felt is somebody's given me a very vague idea and they've kind of given the idea that they're very open and flexible. And then you send your ideas over and then they're like, oh no, that's nothing like what I had in mind. And you go, okay, but I asked you what you had in mind and you had a very vague and open approach. So I think if you can have a clear idea of what you're looking for, that saves everybody a lot of kind of toing and froing, and gives everyone the opportunity to feel like creatively they're on the right track from the beginning. And then from there, kind of ongoing communication, as I said, it could be that you're communicating through a platform, through social media, through email. It doesn't really matter which space this is, but just to keep that communication going, even once you have completed the creative process and finished the track, if you're then pitching it out, just staying in touch with people and kind of just touching base. There have been, as you know, I've worked with hundreds of different music producers and DJs over the years, and there have been some situations where people just go quiet. And you might have an amazing track that you've made with them and you're so excited for it, and then it doesn't get picked up straight away, and then everyone just sort of goes a bit quiet. It's always worth reaching out. And there have been situations where I've then reached out to people, say like a year or two after, and then they haven't bothered to respond. And I just say, if you're going into this creative process with somebody else, then it's important to keep that line of communication open. Because that's how you never know. It might be that song is just not right for the market right now, or it might be that in a couple of years' time, it could get picked up in a completely different capacity, like for a sync license, or for a different market, like the Asian music market, for example.
Okay. And are those things that you would try to hash out? You talked about sort of the legal agreements and splits and things like that, but Is that stuff that you might address in the front end? Hey, which labels are you interested in? What's the backup plan if it doesn't get picked up? Are you going to
Sure.
table it? Are you going to self-release it? Or how do you specify all of that on the front without just coming across like an attorney instead of a creative?
Exactly. It's so hard. And back when I'd have these conversations with my manager and my publisher, and he's like, Alex, don't address these straight away. Like, just try and, have the first communications be creative and then address these things. But actually what I've learned over the years is that it's much better, also because people forget as well. Like, we're only human. We might have got so involved in the creative process and so excited about it, we completely forgot to discuss any of this stuff. I think it's an integral part of the initial communications. You can do it in a really open way and just say, what are your thoughts in terms of splits? What are your thoughts in terms of where this might lead to? Do you have some goals? So I have quite a set way of communicating that from the beginning now, just because I found that it just saves so much headache. And I've had situations where I have been kind of, I wouldn't say dealing with industry sharks, but dealing with people that really want to mess you around simply because you hadn't been clear enough from the beginning or got something in writing. And I do use something called a master agreement from the beginning that just lays out how we're going to work together. So what the splits are going to be for the master, for the writing splits, and then any terms that I would like. And then, of course, the collaborator can come back with their thoughts on this. So I know it is a kind of a sticky subject and something that a lot of people want to avoid. And I definitely wanted to avoid it at the beginning, but I can't emphasize enough, if you can find just that way of sort of politely and smoothly fitting it into your communication early on, it will just save you a lot of stress and a lot of time in the future.
Okay. So you've got a master sort of template that you use, and then that's tailored based on the artists and the discussions and...
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And I would recommend putting this together if you are part of a musicians union. So here in the UK, we have musicians union, the MU, and they provide you with a template if you want to go this way. I actually had arranged it with my manager and publisher, and we'd had a lawyer look over it just to check it included the things that we needed it to include. But there are certainly loads of templates out there, and I would highly recommend just looking into this or reaching out to somebody that can assist you on this, just so that you've got that in place. Because the problem is, if you don't have something in writing, and even if you have it on email, it becomes difficult to be able to implement it further down the line. If that person, say, has been approached by a label or approached a label with the track, that label wants to pick it up, but the label is only communicating with them. Like, where's the agreement that says they also need to communicate with you? And it's not just that you're a kind of third party artist through the other artist or producer. Does that make sense? So you don't want to be sort of secondary to any communications. You need to make sure that you've agreed that with your collaborator from the beginning.
Okay. And for newer producers that are listening to the podcast, can you talk briefly about some of the different types of arrangements in terms of hiring a vocalist, like work for hire versus collaborations or a featuring artist? Or can you kind of break that down a little bit for some of the newer producers listening?
Okay, so with a work for hire, expect to be paying more to the singer and songwriter. What you'll be doing in this situation is you'll be kind of paying somebody to take the full rights. So in this situation, you would be the 100% kind of owner of the record. So anything that the singer has performed or written, perhaps, all of that would just be included in the fee. So there would not be any share, any split with them. Then you've got certain buyouts that you can agree to. So you could agree to a master buyout or a writing buyout. So for this, if you are agreeing to the master buyout, this means that when you are then pitching to labels, if you're then signing to a label, you do not need to be communicating with the person that you brought on board for the track, because the master is what you are licensing to the label. With the writing, obviously, this is to do with publishing and your songwriter shares. This is usually less common to do a buyout on, but it is an option to do a buyout for some people. And for this, it just means that any of your publishing royalties, your songwriting royalties, would be 100% to you again. So these are both kind of parts that you can discuss with people. It's not something that I personally offer anymore, but it is something that a lot of people offer. And also it kind of makes it, if you want something that's solely yours and you don't want to have to put any other names on your release, it gives you that option as well. So the other thing that you were mentioning about featuring versus kind of the collaborations where you have and or X is often used, you can kind of negotiate that usually wouldn't impact like if you were this in the way that you are paying more for a work for hire, this usually wouldn't impact any kind of payment aspect of things. So you would simply just discuss with the person what you feel comfortable with. So for example, if it's really your project and you want this to come out with them as the featuring artist, then you just have to discuss that with the individual. So it really depends on an individual basis. It depends on the person that you're collaborating with, but it's really important you do discuss these things from the beginning, because you might really want something to be very much your own release, and you might either want no other names on the title of the record, or you might want just featuring. And the other person coming in on the collaboration might think that, say, if you've agreed a 50-50 split for the master and for your songwriting royalties, they might believe that therefore it's going to be a collaborative release with their name fully on the release as well. So that is just something to be aware of and to discuss as well.
Okay. And so that kind of comes back to different types of royalty streams. You said you had some thoughts about that and how that's kind of a misunderstood topic. Absolutely.
So when we're talking about, and I am not an expert on this, so please, whatever you do your research as well. But just over the years, this is the information I've had and that I come to time and time again. It's just important that we are aware that there's 3 different royalty streams that are available to us. So we've got the master, and when you're dealing with a label, you'll license the master to them maybe for a number of years on potentially many different terms that you could negotiate with them. And this would obviously, if you're self-releasing, it will be 100% of that income will come to you or you and your collaborators. Then you've got the songwriting royalties, also known as the publishing royalty stream. And these royalties are your work as a writer. So what you have written, your copyright in that respect. A bit like somebody writing a book, it's theirs, it's their copyright. There is another form of royalty that comes through this, and it's important also to just be aware of who your society is in your country, who you need to be signed up with. For example, in the UK, it's called PRS for music. And then you've also got your performance royalties. And this is something that so many people that I speak to, even if they've been doing it for donkey's years, they say to me, I didn't actually know about this. These are to do with your neighboring rights, and it's more of a kind of a newer form of royalty that isn't established in every country. For example, I don't think the US actually pay neighboring rights, but internationally, if you're releasing internationally, which obviously pretty much all releases are these days, there will be neighboring rights royalties potentially coming in from other countries. So you have got I can't remember the name of the one in the US, but for the UK, we have PPL, and they cover these. So it's important to just make sure that you're aware of these 3 different streams, and that when you're discussing with your collaborators, you're addressing which ones you're going to be sharing and which ones might be negotiated.
I didn't quite understand the neighboring rights. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So this is performance royalties. So this is to do with your performance on a record. So back in the day, if you were to go into the studio as a session vocalist and you were just being paid a fee, you'd still be entitled to these because it's to do with your performance. And for these kind of royalties these days, even if you, so if I recorded my voice on a track and I was just doing a cover, for example, or I was just it was just like a work for hire, I would still be entitled to register my performance on this, irrelevant of even if I was not featured. So, for example, if you're an instrumentalist and you played bass on somebody's track, you can register your performance on that record.
Is that kind of just giving credit, or is there a fee associated with that? Because I thought if somebody owns 100% of the masters, they're receiving 100% of the income, but you're saying there's still a small split for that neighboring royalty?
Yes. So for the neighboring rights, any performer on the record can put in their kind of claim for their share of it. It would be very minuscule, and there are specific calculations done depending on your involvement in the record. With this one, I'm not 100% sure if that can be bought out. I think it can be, but basically that would just mean that you wouldn't register your interest in the record.
Okay.
But yeah, effectively any performer on the record is entitled to do this, but it's a bit of a grey area. It's not common in a lot of countries as well still, and it's still a topic of discussion, I think, as to exactly how it should be done in quite a lot of countries.
Okay. A lot of my self-releases, all of my self-releases have been through CD Baby. I'm going to have to go on there and look for neighboring rights, because that's a new term for me. So okay.
Check out on the distribution websites. They should have some more information for the different royalty streams that you can be expecting, and also should be advising on where you can sign up in your local area, in your country.
Okay. Well, that's terrific. If we can kind of pivot, we've talked a lot about the business side of music. I'd like to focus a little bit on the creative side and sort of your approach to songwriting and writing top lines and melodies. Do you have a general process, or does it vary for every different song?
It's a good question. And a number of years ago, before I had worked on too many tracks, I would have said one thing, and now I would say a different thing. In a way, it depends on the track. Sometimes I can be sent a track and I will imagine a character straight away, and this character will be going about their day, or they will be in a certain scenario, and I can create a story around this character. And sometimes I might hear a track and straight away a lyric comes to mind, or straight away a melody comes to mind, but the lyric comes later on. It does depend on the track, but equally, because I'm just working on top lines most of the records I work on, there is a fairly structured approach, as in it will either be one or the other. The melody or the lyric will come first, usually the melody, and I will be inspired by the track and the instrumental and the patterns, the melodic patterns in the instrumental. And then from this, I often come back to it and put the lyrics to the melodic idea that I have. But certainly there are still times when these characters can appear, which is actually very exciting as a creative, as a songwriter, because you kind of get transported to another world. You get this anyway, and I'm sure you feel this when you're inside a track, you're inside a song. But when you have this character appear that out of nowhere, it has often felt for me, I am transported to a completely different place, and I can create a story and an emotion and a feeling that is very separate to myself. And I find that very exciting from a creative perspective.
It's really interesting you say that, because one of the folks that I interviewed recently, Sean Giovanni, he runs a recording studio in Nashville, and he talked about in songwriting, even for an instrumental, how he will visualize sort of what's happening and the storyline, and seeing that in his mind in conjunction with writing. So it's interesting. I'm hearing that several times.
But it's a beautiful way to be able to work in that way. When it happens, it is very very magical, and certainly instrumentally as well. And that's why I'm saying, when I'm listening to a track, I can sometimes be very heavily directed by the track, because often the tracks, they have, they flow and they ebb, and they increase in dynamic, in volume, and in emotion, and then they they have these moments of sparseness and quite quiet moments, and this can really direct the direction of the top line and the vocal as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes for me that even takes the form of envisioning the music video that might go alongside it. Even if I never actually make the music video, I can picture, hey, here's what I would do if I had a bigger budget. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The number of times I have that and I get so excited, and then you discuss it with your collaborator and you go, okay, who's going to invest tens of thousands into this very elaborate music video? As fun as that would be.
Yeah, but
do you often find, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you often find if you have a word that you've read somewhere, or maybe somebody has said something to you? So I have it with the collaborators. Sometimes they might just mention a word, or they might have named their work in progress this random word, and sometimes I just get fixated on this word, and from there a whole picture or image or scenario can be created. Have you had this before?
Frequently what I do, and I use Ableton Live, and in my master template, one of the first things I'll do when I'm writing a track is like come up with 3 adjectives that I want to describe the track. It doesn't always work out that way, but it gives me sort of a focus, energetic, dark, sensual, whatever. And that helps me. I do certainly fixate on words. Sometimes I'm working on a remix right now of Christina Aguilera's Santo, which is a Latin track, and the word saint kind of influenced the entire piece, and it took on sort of a religious dark overtone because of that one word. So I guess yes, absolutely, that does happen to me.
It's amazing how powerful one word can be, isn't it?
It is. When you're coming up with those melodies, once you kind of have an idea, are you doing that on the piano, or do you find yourself singing or humming, or is it a combination?
Sadly for me, my background, as I kind of said at the beginning, was very much kind of piano vocals, singer-songwriter. And I really wish I could say I sit at the piano every time and I work my ideas out there, just because I have such a love for the instrument. But I found over the years, when I was doing that, I was sort of resorting to ideas that didn't work so well for the genre. And as beautiful as the piano is, I think I have very much connected to more acoustic music and classical music, because that was kind of my background and my training on the instrument. So I tend to work more just, I'm listening to the track and I'm walking around and I feel something in my body and in my soul, and then I just get into this headspace. So it is a kind of separate process. But when I am writing songs, just really for myself as an artist, which is something that I kind of keep putting on the back burner all these years. And I have got some songs that I have been coming back to that I'm working on at the moment. But these songs I will sit at the piano and they will come about from that kind of improvisation and that freedom with the instrument. So I think for me, there is a great connection to the instrumental side of things. But for me, with certainly with EDM and all the collaborations I've done, mainly the track has been pushing the ideas.
So you actually have a degree in popular music. When a producer is when they're writing their own melodies, can you offer any advice about how to come up with a catchy, memorable hook? What do you think are the key elements within like the EDM genre? And I know that's a really broad genre, but
well, first, I would say that when it comes to anything creative, there is so much subjectivity that it's so subjective as to whether something is an amazing idea or not. I would say with regards to studying, you don't need to have studied. You just need to have spent, I think there is this idea of 10,000 hours, and I strongly actually believe in that. You need to have spent all these hours just perfecting your craft. So I wouldn't say that a degree or any specific course in popular music, if it says on the tin, I'm going to make you an amazing songwriter or whatever, this doesn't really exist, because everything is subjective. So it's creatively you could be an incredible songwriter without having had any formal training. So I don't really connect my work with having a degree in it. Leading on to the other things that you were saying, could you just elaborate on what you were asking?
Well, I guess, are there any specific sort of bits of advice you can offer for creating memorable hooks? I've heard people talk about, well, keep it within a vocal range so people can sing along with it. Make sure you've got repetitive motifs throughout so that you kind of drive that home. Are there any other things that you would specifically advise somebody that's trying to write, one of those earworms that just gets stuck in your head?
I would say, first of all, sleep on it. So once you've created an idea, and I wouldn't focus solely on it trying to be something that you can imagine people singing along to. I would just try and make it something that you just find fascinating and really interesting. Utilize time. I have been a very impatient songwriter, and in my career, I've been very impatient at times, wanting to do 1,000 things at once. But I would say, creatively, one of the best things you can do is to sit on something and come back to it. You will know when you come back to it, whether that be a day later or a week later. You will know if that idea is genuinely something that sticks with you, and it will haunt you as well. It will haunt you in your dreams. It will haunt you throughout your day. You'll find yourself singing it. That's when you know you have something special. So as much as there are techniques that you can use to write melody, to write lyrics, to perform, I would very much say that it has to come from that creative place, and it has to feel right. And I know that is vague, and I apologize for that, but that is genuinely what I believe and what I have experienced. It just there has to be that sense of feeling, that other kind of otherworldliness that I feel is connected to songwriting and to certain creative works.
Well, you said something that sometimes it's hard because it's so subjective, songwriting, that it's hard to tell whether or not you've got something really good. You ask family and friends and they're all going, yeah, that's good. But you said, if it's something that really haunts you, if it comes back to you and you're hearing it in your dreams, you're hearing it the next day, you find yourself humming along with the tune, or maybe somebody else in your household that's heard it. I mean, those seem like really good indicators that you're onto something. That seems key to me.
Definitely. The other week, so I have a little toddler, and the other week I was running through some ideas, and she was just sat playing, and I sang something, and she hadn't done this before, and she hasn't done it since. She came over to me, she sat next to me, and she tried to sing it back to me. And she almost sang this is obviously part of her development because of her age, but equally, she hasn't done it since, and other things I have sung. And I was fascinated by this. So that something resonated with her. And often I find my husband might just start humming something, and I go, that's my song.
Yeah.
So that's the idea that I was just singing around the other day. So I think it is an amazing way to tell if something is truly special. I don't think that's the right word. Magical, otherworldly. I really like that term. Is if it impacts other people in the way it impacts you. That's when you've got something that other ears want to hear, other people would get goosebumps for. And that's really exciting.
Okay. That's great. You mentioned your husband and your child. How do you balance your family life and your music? What does a usual work day look like for you?
So I work very much around my little one because she is so dinky still. And she does go to nursery a little bit as well. So when I am songwriting and working on more kind of administrative side of things, or having phone calls, usually I try and do this side of things around her and her nap times, and if I'm going out for walks, for example. And then the sessions where I am recording, I do this while she's at nursery or in childcare.
Okay, great. And where do you go to sort of refresh that creative pool? How do you keep your creativity level up?
One of the most important things that I've learned over the years is to separate yourself. Like, there's something, as I'm sure you're aware, writer's block. You get to a point where you feel that you're doing too many different things and your mind is going to explode. You can't process them or untangle them, all the different ideas. I found that for me, walking and getting outside in nature is massively helpful, and fresh air and just finding somewhere beautiful to go to. For other people, I know this might be that they love the buzz of a city and to go and walk around somewhere really busy. For me, it's to be somewhere that's just peaceful and I can hear the birds singing and I can just have that kind of relaxation. And also something else for kind of rejuvenating that creativity is sometimes just to not be afraid to take a break, which for myself has always been very hard. But I think once you become a parent, or you have other responsibilities, or you have your job that you have to go to, it's actually a really good thing to take that break, because then when you come to being creative again, and you have that moment, that time that you're creating, you appreciate it so much more. And I also remember going through a phase where I was so busy with songwriting and sessions and collaborations, which is, it's a beautiful thing, but also creatively you can get to that point where things start to run into each other and you can't separate one thing from another. And that's when I say it's worth taking that step back and just doing something different, even for a week if you need to, or longer if you need to, and not being afraid of taking that space from it.
Okay, fantastic. What are your plans for this coming year?
So I had mentioned to you, I've got another little one arriving in the summer. So up until that point, I have got several collaborations going on, but I also have these songs that I have been promising myself for years now that I would sort out and finish, which in general, as a songwriter, I am very good at finishing my projects. But when it comes to something that is very much your own, and I'm sure you find this as well, sometimes you want to, it's your baby, you want to keep nurturing it, and you don't get to the end. So I'm very determined to get these songs finished. I've got a handful of songs that I've been working on that I will be finishing in the next few months.
Okay. Great. Well, good luck with that, and good luck with the new child. Can I ask what gender, or do you know yet?
We don't know yet. It's still a surprise at the moment, but we should find out in a few weeks' time. And before I forget to mention, I had a beautiful release recently with Darren O'Brien called Beyond the Sky, which came out on High Voltage Recordings, which is Alan Watts' record label. And I've got another beautiful trance track coming out next month in April, on the 15th of April, with Black Hole Recordings, with an awesome producer called D72, and that's called Finish Line, that track. So there are quite a few things going on in terms of releases as well.
Thank you for bringing that up, and it looks like you have some gorgeous trance tracks out there. I noticed you posting about being on some of the major Spotify editorial playlists again for
we're so grateful
trance.
for this. Yeah, we were really lucky with the Atmosphere, the first track that Darren O'Brien and I released a couple of years ago together. That one was picked up by Trance Nation as well, and we're really grateful that they've got us back on this Spotify editorial playlist. And I think that for me, it's one of the subgenres of dance music that resonates a lot with me. There's a lot of kind of ethereal side to it that also kind of takes me back to that more kind of acoustic singer-songwriter roots that I have. And yeah, I'm really excited to be doing more projects actually over the next few months in trance as well.
Do you have a favorite genre?
If you were to have asked me this 10 years ago, then yes, but I've always mixed and matched. I've always gone from one thing to the other. I think the only thing I've always said I am not a fan of is metal music, but even then I can be convinced. In any genre, I can be convinced if you play me the right track.
Okay.
So yeah, within dance music at the moment, it's trance. But I'm sure that will change again at some point, and something will come up and it will convince me otherwise. And overall, over the years, as I had said to you in my past, I have been exposed to jazz, to rock, to blues. Like, there are amazing records, amazing voices, amazing producers, and and songs within every genre. So I'm always here to be convinced.
Okay. Well, if someone wants to reach out to you to hire you or collaborate on a track for their next trance project or maybe their next death metal screamer, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to those inquiries. You can reach out to me on Instagram or by email. If you check on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Alex Holmes Music. So I'm quite easy to find on there. And send me a message and we'll have a chat. I'm always open to hearing new songs, new tracks, and collaborating with different artists and producers, no matter whether they're independent, signed to a label, they're just starting out. I'm always open to tracks and music, and that's the joy and pure beauty of creativity. Is that, like I said to you, I don't believe that training is an essential thing, other than you need to just absorb yourself in your creative art for as many hours as you can to kind of perfect it. I believe that there are some amazing tracks and up and coming artists and creators out there that are just waiting to be heard.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate the conversation today, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much for listening. I'm so thankful for you sticking with me for 100 episodes. These next 100 will be even better. If you enjoyed this interview, please take a moment to leave a rating and review wherever you're listening and share it with a friend. Also, remember to check out the show notes page at producerlifepodcast.com. Just look for episode 100. I'll have links for Alex's latest release, along with a bunch of other helpful resources. Until next time, this is the House Ninja, reminding you to be somebody's hero today.